Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Booktube Chicks Book Club for our January discussion. This month we read Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. And for the next hour or so, we are going to be discussing this book. If you've never been to one of our live shows before, basically the way it works is the first 10 or so minutes, we're going to do introductions and initial thoughts. This time is spoiler free. And then after that, we are going to go into spoiler discussion. So you can either hang out and discuss with us if you're okay with being spoiled or if you've read this book, or if you just want to stay for the initial thoughts. We'll be doing that first. So I'm going to go ahead and, Kat, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and your initial thoughts.
Yes. Hi, I'm Kathleen. My channel is For the Love of Books. I finished this book this morning. I gave it 4 stars. I actually really enjoyed it. I actually listened to the audiobook. I didn't have a physical copy or the ebook with me. And the narrators of the audiobook were very, very good. But I really liked how the story was portrayed. I don't know how to describe it. Through grief and this couple going through they divorced, and it was just really emotional and really raw, and I felt their characters were very real, and I really enjoyed following both of them. The audiobook actually had two narrators, was one for the ex-wife's voice and the other narrator for the ex-husbands, and again both of them were very excellent. So I really liked this book. I did give 4 stars.
Hi, my name is Desiree. You can find me at LibriLabra on all the things like Twitter, Instagram, Booktube, TikTok. And this was actually my pick. I had gotten it from Book of the Month, and also I did that thing where like I had 12 friends recommend reads, and this was something that was recommended. I know a lot of people were talking highly of it. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars, and along the lines of what Kat was saying, I felt like it was very, very real, and they were, the issues they were struggling with were obviously issues that like another married couple might struggle with, and the narrators were very good. I was kind of doing both. I was listening and also reading along at the same time. And so yeah, I gave it 5 stars.
And my name is Chloe. You're on my channel. You can find me at Brunette Bibliophile or Brunette Biblio on most social medias. This is my first experience with Kennedy Ryan, and I've heard a lot of great things about her work, and I completely agree. Just by reading this first book, and this one had a lot of good reviews as well. I give this book 4.5 stars. I also listened to the audiobook, and I agree the narrators for these characters were really good. Um, for a while, I was like, "Man, this is really, sad and bumming me out. Like, where's the romance gonna hit in?" But it's a second chance romance trope, and I was really here for it. I feel like there was a lot of emotion with all of these characters, and overall, it was a really good pick to, one, start off the new year with book club, and two, introduce myself to this author. So I really enjoyed it, and I gave it 4.5 stars. And there is a companion sequel coming out in a few months, and I'm looking forward to reading that as well. Before we get into spoilers, I did write down a couple of trigger warnings because we will probably be touching on most, if not all of them, during our discussion. We've the couple of trigger warnings for this book are loss of a child and stillbirth, divorce, and grief. Those are the main ones. I'm not sure if I'm missing anything. Um, but
Depression and
depression.
suicidal ideation.
All right. Where would we like to start with this book? I'm really curious about Kat's thoughts because you're not the romance reader of the group.
Yeah, no, I actually am glad that this wasn't your typical happy go, lucky kind of romance book. I liked that this was more real and a little bit more raw. These are the kind of romances I tend to enjoy, where it's not such a cookie cutter kind of romance book. I find those books entertaining to read, but they kind of tend to make my eyes roll. So I really liked this one, especially just because um, this was so focused on the characters, and I do love when books are more character driven as opposed to plot driven. And it just the way they were written, and again, I listened to the audiobook, the way they were portrayed through the narrators, it was so good. I felt especially her, all her emotions. And I'm not someone who has children. I've never dealt with that kind of loss. And I felt for her so much time. I felt like I was with her. I felt like I was grieving with her. And I completely understood what happened and what ended up. And I feel like what happened, that the way the grief worked through their marriage and ultimately their divorce, and ultimately bringing them back together again. So I really, really liked this book just because of how, not necessarily because of how that they went through all this, but just because of them and how it just seemed really real and raw. And yes, the romance was good, and at some point I was just like, just get with it, because it was getting annoying, and I was really starting to get like triggered by the amount of times that the male, the guy, the ex-husband, talked about this woman's breasts. And I was like, just goddamn, just sleep together, because it's getting annoying. I have never listened to so much of about a woman's breast before, because it happened. And so eventually did happen, and I was like, good God. And then it got worse. They kept thinking about her breasts even more. But regardless, it was a really good ending, and I'm glad it ended the way it felt nice, the way it wrapped up. You said there's a companion sequel. I didn't know that, so I might pick that up too.
Follows her best friend Soledad.
Okay, okay, yeah, but it was really, 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 really good, just because I feel like the characters just blew me away.
The 1 star knocked off was because of all
I'm like, I feel like I'm so intimate with this woman's breasts now.
Before we go on, I actually thought of another trigger warning that I'd like to add, which is off-page death of a parent and or parental figure, because that is touched on throughout his therapy sessions and whatnot.
So I thought it was interesting that they like owned a restaurant together. Like their lives were obviously so interwoven. You know, they were married, they had 2 children, but then they also worked together. Like that's such a close relationship to be seeing your partner like that much. So obviously their divorce was very, very heartbreaking. I think though that something that surprised me was um that even though food was mentioned for a book that had a restaurant with 2 characters that worked in the restaurant, I don't know, I feel like it wasn't mentioned as much as I would have expected. You know, like a lot of books, or maybe the author just felt like it would take away from the seriousness of the story. But I feel like a lot of other books that deal with food kind of also have recipes, and it's the food is a little bit more at the forefront. So I was kind of expecting that and didn't get that. There was like a recipe or two at the end of the book. I didn't really go over it in detail to see what it was, but
Maybe the food wasn't as prominent in the story because
Yeah, I feel like
the
it wasn't that
characters aren't
important to the
making the
story.
food.
Yeah.
But like, because like Yasmin, definitely she's more of like a business owner. She's not really
Yeah.
invested in making the food. And I mean, even with Josiah, it seems like since he had hired the chef, he wasn't really involved in making of the food anymore either.
I guess it was mostly just because they kept talking about Bird and how she like cooks so much, and like she found her cookbook and everything. And so I don't know.
That's true, especially towards the end when they kept trying to make her recipes.
So now I'm curious what the recipe at the end is,
It's making me hungry.
because it did put one in here.
I wonder if it's in both of our editions or just yours.
It's Aunt Bird's limoncello pound cake. Oh, and then
yeah,
Josiah's sweet potato pie pancakes. Oh, there's a few of them in here. My Aunt Evelyn's corn pudding, Soledad's vinaigrette. All right, cool. I might try to make that vinaigrette because they went off about that. I'm trying not to like jump too far ahead.
Well, while we're kind of still on the topic of recipes, did you look at the ingredients? Because the last ingredient is something like a heap of Southern hospitality. a one hefty dollop of bad and bougie.
That's funny. What do you think about the friendships? Like her friends?
I thought they had like a really good girl support group, which is why I'm really glad that we're getting the book. Why we're getting Soledad's book, especially because we did get a little bit of an insight to her relationship with her husband, and he seems a bit shitty. So I want to see what that story is like. If it's gonna be them rekindling their romance, finding their footing, or if it's gonna be she leaves him. It probably says it in the synopsis, but I just haven't looked.
I think her friends were really supportive. But Hendrix was making me uncomfortable with the way she was like talking about Josiah. Like she was just constantly reminding Yasmin that like he's so hot, or like just I don't know. Like she was thinking about him a little bit too much, I feel like.
She's like, this is what you're missing now that you divorced him.
I feel for Yasmin so much. Like I can't even imagine having to see my ex-husband with someone new, especially someone that they both worked with. And like I think she took it like really, really well. I don't think I would have taken it that well. I think I would have like lost my mind.
I think though they'd been divorced for 2 years, so I feel like she kind of had a little bit more time to not expect it necessarily, but to prepare for it, as opposed to if it had been like 6 months. Or like
It was still like the first person though. And then like, you know, when you see like an ex-partner move on, you don't want them to move on to someone close to you. You know, you would want them to move on with a stranger, somebody you don't like. No. So the fact that it was like someone they worked with, but understandable that they were spending a lot of time together and whatnot.
I mean, I wonder like how close was Yasmin with her really, because she wasn't like super invested in
the restaurant
anymore.
I don't know.
I do want to briefly talk about, because I texted you guys, I understand that the daughter, Deja, was going through like a rough patch, the teen years and all that. But some of the things she said, I was like, the absolute
she was such
audacity.
a bitch.
But
she was some.
If I had said half the things
but she was
to my mom, she would have smacked the shit out of me.
I mean, I think that's where Yasmin's therapist kind of comes in, because she definitely talked to her therapist a lot about it. And it was more than just her going through like a teenage rebellious phase. It was that plus the fact that she blamed her mother so much for everything that happened and for the divorce. So she had like, she was holding a grudge. She was just like, you basically ruined our lives. And that's how she behaved. She behaved like a rebellious teenager who felt like their mom ruined their life.
Yeah.
And so that came out in like everything that she said and every interaction that was present.
I mean, yeah, she was a bitch, but she was also a typical teenager. So all her reactions were very, very typical of her age. So I'm not surprised of how she was probably in some way grieving on her own, obviously,
Mhm.
and she was doing it the wrong way. So
I think what really irritated me is Yasmin was trying to express that to Josiah, and he was just shrugging it off until Deja
Heard it.
actually
Yeah.
said something to
Mhm.
him. And even then, I don't think like he he told her like, no, don't speak about your mother like that. But I feel like he wasn't serious enough with it because she said it at least 2 more times to him, and I'm like, dude, bro.
Kids are wild like that. um obviously grief is a huge thing in this book, and you have the two characters' perspectives, and I like the way the book kind of talked about the fact that for a lot of people therapy is still very stigmatized, and for Josiah in particular, like, his whole life was crumbling. He lost his aunt, he lost his son, and he was about to lose his marriage, and even despite all that he was still unwilling to even try therapy, which that like you have to have a huge um negative perception of it if you're not even, well, like you've lost so much and you're about to lose everything with your wife. And the fact that, because you could say I don't believe in it but I love her so much I'll do it anyway, you know what I mean, and he was still like unwilling to do it. So I really, really appreciated just seeing how he finally, said, okay, I'll go to therapy. Like obviously the reason was just to be supportive for his son and so that his son wouldn't think it was bad. But he went, and even though he had his walls up in the first session or so, like he started opening up and taking in information and seeing how it was helping him. So I just loved that therapy was featured in that way.
I agree. And I was actually I was kind of comparing it like his like stigmatism against it and how angry he was. Not even necessarily angry, but like how like he was determined it's not going to work for
It'll
me.
work. Mhm.
Exactly. And then it worked. Like Will does not get like angry about it that way or like as fearful, but like I tell him all the time, like he could benefit from
No, like
therapy,
everyone can
right?
benefit from it.
Like
And like
it's
it's just so wild. I remember because even I was kind of like, I don't need therapy. I don't need therapy. And then like finally I was like, okay, we can go to therapy. And like my experience was just kind of mind blowing that it was like there's so many people in this world that will never have this experience, and like we have to engage with them.
yeah,
like,
'cause, like
like
I mean like I did therapy for about a year and I like it wasn't a bunch of like heavy stuff like that's covered in this book, but even just having another sounding board is so nice. And I know Will could unpack like a ton of stuff. And he's not like anti-therapy because him and I went to a therapy session, but I'm like, bro, you could unpack so much with just yourself.
it's so valuable. But I think the other thing to consider is, right, that it's like a privilege,
Mhm.
because if you don't have insurance, then
I was gonna say it's like it's
sessions
not
are
just
so
like, oh, go to
expensive.
therapy. Like
Right, yeah, no, yeah,
it's
like
a
it's
lot of
really
people can't even buy groceries nowadays, much less afford therapy sessions. And
right.
even if you have insurance, some people only have like the most basic of insurance, and copays can be expensive. So
I'm
um,
really lucky that my copay is only like $20, but like if
yeah,
people have to pay out of pocket, I get that like it could be anywhere from $120 an hour to 180 or even
yeah,
more depending on the therapist. So like I totally understand that it's a privilege, but it should also be a priority. You know what I mean?
yeah. Oh
Like,
yeah, I agree.
so I'm just like, do you think had he been willing to go to therapy, like when things were falling apart for them, do you think everything would have went the same way, or do you think maybe
No.
they would have been able to prevent the divorce?
They might have been able to prevent it. It may have
I-
inevitably happened, but it probably wouldn't have happened as fast as it did.
I was gonna say, I was like, I think the divorce would have happened, but I think it might have happened differently. So yeah.
I wonder what the percentage of people who get divorced get back together. Like, I would love to know what that statistic is. Just out of curiosity, because like, I don't know. I'm like one of those people that doesn't give up easily. So like,
I'm sure it's higher than we think, and divorce rates in general are super high. So if people get back together, I wouldn't be surprised. It's a lot higher than we think.
are you surprised that they got remarried?
No.
No, I was hoping. I was like, please end on a good note, because this book has been so depressing up until this moment. And
Well, I mean, like, there was that whole part where they met that other couple that never got married. So like, I felt like they were trying to set us up for that. Like, you know, I thought maybe it would still end with them getting back together, maybe him moving in, but that they wouldn't get remarried. So, would it have still felt like a happily ever after to you if they hadn't gotten married, but they got back together?
It probably would have been like a happy for now.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's weird because I grew up in a home that's very conservative, so I believe in marriage being like the ultimate ending goal for a couple. However, do I think that they would have been just as happy if they didn't have like this piece of paper that's saying that, oh, you're married now, you can file taxes together? Yes, they would have still been just as happy. Am I glad that they actually got married instead of being like just gotten back together without this piece of paper? Yes, I am happy that they actually made it official, but I think they would have been just as happy without marriage. So,
especially because they met that other restaurant couple who they were together for like 30 years and had never been married.
yeah. And you know that works for some people. I'm sure there's a huge especially nowadays, a huge number of people who just live together and don't ever end up marrying. That's perfectly okay. So I mean, I think for them it wouldn't have changed anything in the end.
Are you surprised that she wasn't pregnant? Like,
I was
what do
sad.
you
I was sad. I was like, oh, that is like gonna bring up a lot of emotions because of what happened with her before. But I was kind of hoping that there would be a baby at the end, kind of wrap up this whole story with a nice little bow. But yeah, I was very sad.
I found it to be so okay when she first thought she was pregnant, I was like, this might be like a little too not convenient, but a little too hefty for this book. It's already got a lot of emotion in it. I don't think we need to like add this in. But I was also like worried for her because it's stated multiple times that
it was like a health risk for her.
Yeah,
like,
it was a huge health risk for her. And I'm like, do we really need to bring this into this already emotional book? But I do like that they talked about like adopting more kids.
Yeah, I like that she said that she wanted more kids, and then she clarified it could be through adoption or whatever. I think she mentioned surrogacy. So I'm glad that she's willing to go through other venues, because some people are very determined to have their own kids, and I'm like, blood isn't the only thing that makes you family. So I'm glad that they were open to other options if she's so wanting to have another baby.
I was kind of surprised that he decided to get a vasectomy, although I do understand like why he did. I don't know. I wasn't expecting that.
They are reversible.
Were you expecting her to get a hysterectomy as opposed to him getting a vasectomy?
It was, she said she didn't want to get her tubes tied. And like, obviously she was more willing to take the risk of having a baby than he wanted to be part of. So like I get that he was the one that was like, no, it'll bring me peace of mind to know that this won't happen. So
good, because not all men are like that.
Yeah, unfortunately.
What did you think of Vashti as a character?
I didn't mind her. I am glad that she decided to go to the other location that they were opening. But I feel like there was, I don't know if I want to say like too much familiarity so much as like things were moving fast. Like the kids knew fast. And I was kind of a little irritated too, like at Josiah just like inviting this other woman into his ex-wife's home.
Yeah,
Like
and that
invite her to
irritated
your
me.
house.
Yeah, and that irritated me that he got mad at her for being upset at that. And I'm like, why are you not getting this? Like, introducing your girlfriend to your kids is a big deal. Like, and I was kind of like pissed off at him. I was like, dude,
In your
you have,
ex-wife's home.
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
yeah, I would definitely be upset if I like came home and then somebody was there. But I do get his point that he was saying like the kids are already familiar with her. They completely know her. They love her. So
Right,
like
but they know her through the restaurant. They don't know her in this whole new title as daddy's girlfriend, you know what I mean? So I don't know. I felt like he crossed the line that he should have not crossed yet without talking to either his ex-wife, being like, hey, fair warning, I'm bringing my girlfriend over to meet the kids, you know what I mean? And I just feel like he crossed the line, and it was not, it was rude of him in a way.
I don't think we mentioned, but it is a Black romance with two Black characters. But what was I gonna say? Not about Vashti. Oh, I thought it was cute that he was just like, we're gonna bang, but nothing else.
And then he so accurately described her breasts for Kat to read.
Like that's way too much history, dude. Because Deja just turned 14 and they were married before they had kids. So that's like, to think that you could just, roll around in the sheets and it's not going to bring back. That's so long to be familiar with someone else's body and just like everything. Like, I don't know. I think that's just funny to think that that's all it was going to be.
I like that she also managed to introduce the one bed trope.
Yeah.
Some way, somehow, it all comes back to that
trope. The fact that Deja was like giving them so much crap, mostly her dad, but I know towards the end she was like, "Oh, is that what you're calling it now? Catching up?" Like, but I think like one of the biggest things that like Yasmin, because as a parent, I will tell you, we all have our dysfunctions, right? Like our parents, as well-intentioned as they were, as much as they tried, something about them gave us some kind of dysfunction. And so when you're then a parent trying to do better than your own parent, things are still going to leak out. Things are still going to happen because no parent is perfect. There's no such thing. It's just going to go to one extreme or the other. So I understand how challenging it was for Yasmin to like be super honest with Deja, admit to her mistake, admit regretting the divorce. Like she just had to be like so fallible, I guess, with her daughter, and also so honest and vulnerable to like rebuild their connection. But I'm glad that like we got to see that. We got to see a parent messing up and apologizing to their child, because a lot of times parents don't admit their mistakes and they want to be seen as infallible and perfect. And so, I really love that. We also got to hear what the therapist was saying to her, to being like, you're human, you're going to make mistakes, as long as you communicate that to your daughter and you apologize when you need to. Like, there was just so much good stuff in this book. Like, obviously challenging topics, but just, really real good stuff. I don't know if I actually had a question there, but
What do you guys think? Like I said earlier, it's probably in the synopsis. What do you guys think the next book is going to be focusing on? I guess. I mean, we know it's Soledad, but is she going to leave him, or is she going to find somebody else?
What I don't remember what she did. Was she just a stay-at-home mom?
I think she was a stay-at-home mom for the most part. What's his name?
Kids.
What?
How many kids does she have? Do you remember?
2 or 3. I know one of them was friends with Deja, and then there were some younger ones. Definitely at least 2. And she thinks what's his name was cheating because he was talking about another woman in his sleep, or saying her name. I'm
gonna look it up now.
Share with the class what the synopsis is, please.
Let me see. Kennedy. This has like nothing to do with nothing, but I was trying to put in that I was reading this book in the Bookly app, and only her older books were coming up. I was getting frustrated. Okay, let's see. Soledad Barnes has her life all planned out, because of course she does. She plans everything. She designs everything. She fixes everything. She's a domestic goddess who's never met a party she couldn't host, or a charge she couldn't lead. The one with all the answers and the perfect vinaigrette for that summer salad. But none of her varied talents can save her when catastrophe strikes. And the life she built with the man who was supposed to be her forever goes poof in a cloud of betrayal and disillusion. But there is no time to pout or sulk or even grieve the life she's lost. She's too busy keeping a roof over her daughters' heads and the food on the table, and in the process of saving them all, Soledad rediscovers herself. From the ashes of a life burned to the ground, something bold and new can rise. But then an unlikely man enters the picture, the forbidden one, the one she shouldn't want but can't seem to resist. She's lost it all before and refuses to repeat her mistakes. Can she trust him? Can she trust herself? After all she's lost and found, can she be brave enough to make room for what could be?
When does that come out? That sounds really good.
Let's see. Book details. March 5th.
I'm putting it on my list.
I think it was read now for a certain point on NetGalley, because I ended up getting it.
But are you going to read it before published date? Kennedy Ryan. Okay, it's on my list now. I have another book by Kennedy Ryan too. I got it from BookNet Fest, I think.
I thought this was the one that you got from BookNet Fest.
I think I got both of them from BookNet Fest, actually. I'm not sure. I have a basketball romance from her too.
Okay.
So I should look into that one as well.
I want to read I don't know if it's called the Kingmaker series, because I keep seeing that one at Barnes & Noble.
Let's see. I'm going to look it up.
Every other day when I go.
Is it All the King's Men series?
Maybe.
And the first book is called The Kingmaker?
Yeah.
Let's see. This sounds like a billionaire romance.
Yeah, I think it is.
I'm here for that. Consider it on my want to read list. Yeah, the other one I have is a basketball romance. It's from the Hoops series.
I've heard that was really good too.
I'll have to move it up on my TBR, because there's There's at least 2 books. If it would load, I could see how many there actually are in the series. 1, 2, 3. There's 3 books in the series, so that's not too bad. And then a bunch of like shorts. Okay, is there anything else we'd like to talk about with this book?
I don't know. I like, how strong their bonds were just as a family in general. Even when they did decide to get divorced, they were still there for their kids. They were still running the restaurant together. And that's just, I don't think everybody is capable of that. Like, I know so many people that are like, you still talk to your ex? Like, you still just, whatever. I know it's not the norm for a lot of people to be able to maintain a friendship after the fact.
Desiree, your situation is very out of the norm. Like super, like you are a super outlier.
But it's possible. Like, I would just say it's hard, but like,
But I feel like also is that, I don't know. I feel like the way they ended was because of so much of the grief.
Mhm.
A lot of even when they divorced, us, reading through both of their perspectives, they were still very much in love with each other.
Mhm.
And I feel like at some point, most people, when they divorce, I feel like they
They're so
don't
tired of each other.
love, they don't love the other person as deeply as these two still loved each other. So when I was listening to their, their thoughts as I was going through the book, it was just like, listen, just get back together, because they were so in love with each other, even though they were like, oh, I don't know how he feels, or how she, blah blah blah. It was just like, it was so obvious of how they felt about one another, and everything that they went through. It hurt, but that commitment and that love to each other was still there. And I feel like a lot of people who divorced, it's not there anymore.
I mean,
go ahead. Sorry.
It was also mentioned that Josiah did not want it. So I definitely feel like I don't know how, like, obviously she didn't fall out of love, but he definitely did not.
I also appreciate how she explained like how deep her depression was in that moment, in that time, that she just didn't have the energy to try to save both things, that she had to like pick one or the other, and obviously it had to be herself. Like, she had to pick.
And the thing is, they lost a child, and as sad as it is, one thing that I always hear from parents who lose a child, it's a tragic every time. It's that the marriage ends up not lasting because they just can't deal with the grief together. So I don't know. It's just a coworker of mine at work lost a child. Her child drowned, and she had just gotten married like maybe a year or two ago. And I was like, oh, her marriage is not going to last, because I feel like a lot of cases that's just how it goes. And when you lose a child, it just, the marriage ends up going with it. So
I mean, she also felt so alone because he wasn't crying. He wasn't allowing himself to grieve because he didn't feel like he could, right? He didn't feel like he could take the time to stop and fall apart with her when he had to keep everything together with the restaurant and keep everything moving. So it's just,
but then, I mean, for her, she must have felt alone, but imagine for him also how alone he was, because he was the one who had to keep going.
Mm-hmm. But I'm glad they were both able to eventually heal enough to find their way back to each other.
Is there anything else we'd like to talk about?
We haven't said anything about Mark. Did you guys think Mark was just
He wasn't really like. I didn't. I feel he was just there. I feel like as a backboard for Josiah having a girlfriend.
He was. I feel like he was a plot device. He was just there to keep the story going. So as sad it is, and he was like he was a nice guy, and I feel like he took it well when she dumped him. But yeah,
what do you
I
think
feel
about,
like.
go ahead. No, I was gonna say, what do you think about her mom? Like her mom kind of like
Her mom was awesome. It was hilarious.
I probably would have been the same way. Like, what? You invited them to dinner? Like,
You're like, she knows I'm cooking this meal, right?
right? Yeah. She would have been so insulted if Vashti had brought, her own mashed potatoes or whatever the case was.
Well, that's like my mother-in-law. Like, she is cooking everything. Don't bring anything.
I don't know. I guess like at some point I was worried because he was like, I guess a politician. I don't know. I just worried he had like bad intentions or it was like all about some kind of image for him or I don't know. I wasn't sure where that was going. So I'm glad she was just like, I still love my ex-husband. So, and she broke up with him. Well, it sounds like we all agree that we would read the next one. Would you, outside of reading the next one, because like you're already familiar with Soledad, you would also read her backlist, right?
Yeah, I think it would depend on the synopsis for me, but I definitely have some that I'm interested in.
I scrolled through her just author profile on Goodreads. All of her books has over a 4-star rating, so I was like, okay. I'd be okay with reading something different from her. Yeah. Especially if they're as good as this one was, so.
I'm disappointed that my book of the month rating will not apply.
Why?
Oh, because it's a 2023.
Yeah, it's a 20. Yeah, no, not 2023. It must have been like a 2022.
Girl, you have way too many book of the month ones.
I know, but I read this one. I
You should have read it sooner. I looked at the drop today, and it just like seeing the pics, it just solidified. Like, I'm glad I canceled book of the month.
Why?
Because
they don't interest you anymore, or
they don't interest me anymore. I was skipping a lot of months. And there are some months I know this month they have one romance. I've never heard of the romance before, but like there would be some months where it's like 3 thrillers, a historical fiction, and a fantasy, and I'm like, no, you need to have one thing from every genre, roughly. You can't have like multiple.
Why you need one thing from every genre if the only genre you want from is romance?
Why do we have to have 2 thrillers? Why we got to have multiple thrillers? They need to understand that not all of their subscribers are thriller readers.
I mean, I do agree with Chloe. You should have a variety.
At the very least, if you're gonna have 5 books. So let's say they have 5 books. I know that sometimes they do more, but let's say they have 5. You have thriller, you can have fantasy, you can have historical fiction, you can have romance, and you can have something else, a sci-fi. Something for everyone.
I will probably. I don't know. I was thinking about skipping. I haven't decided yet. I might get the fantasy.
Do you ever skip?
No. And
I don't think I've ever skipped.
You haven't. And every single month they used to have a max of 3 books. She would have 3 books every single month. And now they have a max of 5. And when they came out with that, I said, Desiree, they do not mean for you.
So wait. So you have book of the month. You get to pick your one book, and you can choose other books in addition. The other books in addition.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they're like 11 books. 11 books for the hardcover.
What cracked me up?
That's not bad. That's really
Right?
Oh no,
good.
it's not. It's not
That's
bad.
really good.
It's not bad, but when you're skipping as much as I was,
I
and
mean, yeah, I agree with that.
yeah, when you're skipping as much as I was, and the price was going up per year, I said, why am I going to waste $200?
I agree. If the value depreciated for you, then there's no reason to continue.
Okay. Give me 1 second. I have to plug it.
Well, to kind of bring things back around, I'm glad this was a book of the month choice, because had it not been, I may not have heard of it. Um, so
Yeah, I never heard of that book. So, but it was a very, very, very good choice. I don't know if that's the book. I don't think it was the book that I chose when you gave out your picks. Mostly because it's a long book. But
it wasn't that
dude,
bad.
the one it wasn't that bad. The one thing I will complain about the book is the chapters are super long. I would get to like the audiobook and all of a sudden it's like 30, 40 minutes, one chapter, and I'm like, listen, break it down for me. So
I was thinking that when I started it too, and then once I actually like got a groove on and got into the book, it wasn't as bad anymore. Because I've been
because a lot of the reading that I did was in the car to commute, and once I get to work I have to stop, and I'm like in the middle of a chapter and I'm like, listen, I can't have I hate stopping in the middle of a chapter. It drives me nuts.
Did we do final thoughts? If we haven't done final thoughts, let's do final thoughts.
I guess I'll go first. So I was glad this was the that we started off the month with this book pick. It was really, really good. It does deal with some dark topics like stillbirth, loss of a child, depression, divorce, grief. So it does tend to be a little bit of a darker story as you get into, but it's really good. You really feel for these characters. They're very raw and they're very real. Take it from someone who does not read romance at all. This was a very character driven story, and it was excellent. I did give it 4 stars. And it was just, the characters just blow you away. And if you're an audio person, I would definitely recommend getting the audiobook because the narrators did a really, really good job.
How would you describe the pacing?
It was fine. Did you have an issue with the pacing?
No, I didn't personally have an issue with it. I was just reading other people's reviews, and like a few people said that it was really slow, and I mean, I had it sped up, but like I didn't find it to be slow or dragging anywhere.
No.
I felt the pacing was okay. I mean, it's a slightly longer book for a romance, but overall, I think it's fine.
I mean, you can say that it was a slow burn romance because it took until the end until they finally did something, and the whole story they're like talking about each other. But I don't know. I thought the pacing was fine for me. I didn't find any one part of the story like particularly slow or boring or anything.
So I gave it 5 stars, and again, it does include heavy themes. I know somebody whose review I read also said that they felt like it was more women's fiction than romance. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but I can see like the women's fiction elements in it. But I still think it was a romance at its core. It was a second chance romance. I really appreciated the writing. I thought it was funny in a lot of different places. I know I was listening to the audiobook with John in the car, and there was a few times that he like laughed out loud at what was being described, or I think it was like things that were happening relating to the dog. That something the dog was doing, and it just ended up being really, 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 really funny. But I'm definitely going to not only check out her companion novel coming out in March, but also I'll take a look back and see what some of her backlist is too. So,
yeah, I agree with a lot of what was said tonight. I gave this book 4.5 stars. Overall, I really enjoyed it. I do anticipate looking into other books by Kennedy Ryan, including the sequel for this book, the companion sequel. But overall, I think we had a really solid start to the new year with book club, and I'm really glad that we read this, especially because I'm trying to read books off my physical TBR so I can get those off. So talking about a couple of different things coming up. First, if you're here, you're a romance fan. Desiree and I have our quarterly romance book club meeting on this Sunday. We read The Deal by Elle Kennedy. So you can come chat with us on Desiree's channel on Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern. Her channel is linked in the description below. You can follow us on Twitter at Quarter Romance for our upcoming quarterly book picks as well. But we're starting off with a hockey romance this year, which I think, is this a first hockey romance for you too?
Yes. No. Well, the other one sort of was.
Yeah, it wasn't the novella.
Yeah.
I don't want to count that because it wasn't. It was yes, but it wasn't.
Right. Yeah. Time. Sure.
I've read some Lyssa K. Adams books are sports romance, but it's not like super heavy in the sports part of it. So there's like a little bit of hockey in one of them. And then next month we're also, I got to pull up the calendar here. We're going to be doing Pages and Pals on Kat's channel, which is also linked in the description below, on February 9th at 8 p.m. Eastern. That'll be over on her channel. And that is, we hang out and we just read whatever we're currently reading with friends because it's always more fun to read with friends. And then next month for this book club, let me grab the cover real quick. Let's see here. We are going to be reading The Marriage Act by John Mars. This is another thriller. I think we all really enjoyed The One when we read it last year. So I'm very excited to be picking up another thriller by John Mars, since apparently I'm a closeted thriller girly. But that was going to be, I'll go back to my calendar here. That live show is going to be on February 25th at 6 p.m. Eastern on this channel. And then you can follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at Booktube Chicks for all the updated information regarding not just that live show, but any live shows that are going to be happening under the Booktube Chicks umbrella. We will update there. But that is everything we have for this live show today. So thank you all so much for joining us, and we hope to see you next month for the Marriage Act, for the Deal live show, for Pages and Pals. We hope to see you at all of them, and we will see you all next time.